My name is Gifford, and I'm a human rights activist and international volunteer with the Ukrainian military. I look forward to sharing with organisations what I've learnt about negotiation, communication, teamwork, bravery, persistence, leadership, diversity, technology, and how to get the best out of everyone around you.
Your story is one of the most extraordinary because you went out there as a volunteer.
The story begins at my desk, and the events of the summer of 2014 were shocking everyone to the core, and it was making the markets quite volatile.
Mesa Gifford on the left is from Cambridgeshire, and despite no military background, volunteers in the war against so-called Islamic State.
Why I left my job in the city to fight ISIS? Can you remember the first time you heard about the Islamic State? For me, it was when Mosul fell in June 2014.
Tonight, Islamist rebels captured the major city of Mosul after its defence.
Along with millions of people all around the world, I watched ISIS grow in power. Every day there was something new and sickening out of the Middle East. The brutal execution videos of captured soldiers, journalists and humanitarian workers. Women treated like cattle and sold into sexual slavery. Gay men were thrown from buildings, refugees fled in terror, and of course we watched the defenceless Yazidis trapped on Sinjar mountain. Me, I was living in London and I worked a pretty ordinary job in the city.
Mason, if I can start with you, you've got no contact or connections with what was happening in Syria, but you just felt like that you needed to get out there. What was your experience of going and fighting IS firsthand?
Well, I think we all know what it was like back in 2014 to see ISIS rise, and they have done terrible things to Syrian people. I've seen entire communities wiped out, and I've seen dozens of my own friends die, thousands of local fighters die fighting against them. I went as an internationalist to stand alongside these people as the ultimate act of solidarity and say to them, look, you're not alone. When you're on the front line, it's just chaos. They fired rockets at us. They sent suicide vehicles against us, and they wouldn't let up going on. It is one of the most strangest things about life, that if you want to give up your life, if you want to actually do something for someone else, for a stranger, and to be selfless for them, you actually have to be selfish to the ones that love you the most.
What is a transnational volunteer? Since the dawn of time, people have gone abroad to fight other people's causes. Thousands of young American boys went over to Britain to join the American Eagles alongside the RAF as they battled the Nazis in Europe long before America joined the conflict. Thousands and thousands of young men and women went to join the socialist movement in Spain during the Civil War there. So we have a rich heritage in the West of young men and women being motivated by a sense of purpose, by a sense of responsibility, to go abroad to fight the good fight against what any sane and sober and moral person would describe as evil.
Pensive, hypervigilant, these foreign volunteers are reconnaissance soldiers, reliving weeks of fear and final victory in the battle for Kherson.
Now, British human rights activist Mesa Gifford is currently on the ground in Kiev as Putin's tanks close in.
Many are veterans of the Kurd campaigns against ISIS in Syria. Now they work beyond the front lines, deep into enemy territory for Ukraine.
We would get so close to the Russians that we could hear them talking. We could hear them cooking their food and chopping the wood to build their shelters.
In recent months, Ukraine is under attack by the Russian state, and this is the most violent and most bloody conflict in Europe since the Second World War.
What would you say to anyone in the UK now that's watching events unfolding in Ukraine and wants to go over there and get involved?
That the war in Ukraine, it's one of the most defining conflicts of this century. This is a war that I genuinely believe in. This is a war that thousands of young men from Britain, America, Australia, all over the world come to because they are fighting for democracy. They're fighting for Europe, for peace in Europe, and fighting against a dictator that, if we don't beat him here, could bring war, death and destruction to many other places around the world.
I think some people in the UK, they forget that we are in an interconnected world, that everything that happens across the other side of the world really does affect us. So being part of this movement is a real honour for me and something that I'm very proud to be part of.